There's some guy out there right now listening who's got like a dartboard with your face on it. It's like, my fucking email didn't make it. Big D's over here reading the McDonald's menu. Sorry, guy.
They also have the Maple Dijon, the Maple Bacon Dijon with artisan grilled chicken. You know, who could say no to that?
Artisan grilled chicken.
Hi, folks. This is Louis Hertham, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shat on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld, the unofficial podcast companion piece to the hit HBO series Westworld. I'm one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Ashley Schlafly.
Hi, y'all.
And this is our Telegraph edition where we look back on this week's episode of Westworld through the best emails and voicemails from the week. As a reminder, this is the final episode of Westworld. We just watched the finale, but it is not the final week of Shat on TV Westworld. We still have several more podcast editions coming your way, including one more Telegraph. So if you want to write in for that one with your thoughts about this Telegraph or anything else we cover in the next week, you can write us at hosts@shatontv.com or call 914-719-SHAT and leave us a voicemail. We will have our Westie Awards coming up next week, so you can go and vote right now at shatontv.com/Westies. And that is our awards that we do every season. We choose the categories and nominate. You go ahead and do the voting. Again, that's at shatontv.com/Westies, or just go to the Shat on TV website and you can find it there. The voting will be wrapped up on Monday, and we will release the winners on Tuesday in a very, very special podcast episode. I'm going to be wearing a tuxedo for that. I don't know if you guys are getting dressed up.
No, but I plan on drinking because it is a prestigious event. You know, this is it's a moment to celebrate with our listeners, all fans of Westworld, and these categories. I mean, they're just oozing with class.
And you have an additional chance to hang out with us before the Westies during our Shappy Hour. That is our Friday hangout. So you can join us at shatontv.com/Twitch at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on Friday. We do that every week where we're hanging out. We could talk Westworld. We could talk Shat the movies. We could talk coronavirus response, whatever you guys like. Come hang out with us on Twitch. Ashley has handpicked the best emails and voicemails from the week. They may not be read in their entirety because we're trying to save some time, but you can read the complete emails at shatontv.com. Just go to Westworld and go to the Telegraph section. You can find them all there. And Ashley is responding to your emails there. So even if you didn't make the Telegraph, you will get a response on the website, shatontv.com. Now that all that's out of the way, I think it's time for us to get into the Telegraph. And guys, this week, there was really one topic on people's minds. And if you thought that we were critical of the show during the deep dive, just wait. Just wait. I think that the audience has a lot to say about it, and it's not very nice.
And I do love it when the heat is off of us. Like, I feel like we got a little bit of pushback on YouTube. It was about, the first, when I talked about the deep dive, it was about 90% really didn't like it. I'm sorry, the Instacast, about 90% didn't like it. And then with the deep dive, it was more like 70-30. There were some more fans, people who'd gone back to rewatch it. And it feels a little bit like we're a little vindicated that we weren't the only ones, not the only ones out there who were a little disappointed.
I mean, experts, Joanna Robinson, Kim Renfro, are talking about, Kim Renfro just put an article out, a really well-written article that was basically just talking about how it is getting so difficult to be a Westworld fan. And not that it's like we're giving up on the show, but rather people who love the show like we do are finding it stressful to watch.
Well, and just, I think that a little bit of defense for the person that did like it, just so I'm not just totally negative. I do understand it, especially in these times. We want to like something, right? Like we really want to enjoy something. Well, except for Gene and me too, a lot of the time, really, if I'm being totally truthful. But we want to like something because we need that levity in our lives right now. And Westworld is a show that reminds us of a time gone by where we were all together watching great TV. And so it coming back, it couldn't have been better timing with the COVID craziness that began. And so I I understand people who don't want to give up on it because we need shows like Westworld to keep us distracted and to keep us entertained. And hopefully we can complain about this one. We can talk about it. We can analyze it, break it down. And season 4, here's the deal, guys. We're all going to be watching it anyway. So just keep that in mind.
So before we get to the listener complaints about this season, there are a couple other topics we'll be covering, including Dolores, Serac. Thankfully, people wrote in about something else other than to gripe. So we'll have those, and then we'll wrap it up with some voicemails. Let's get into it. Big D, hit that telegraph. All right, our first email comes in about Dolores and Mexican independence, and it comes from Rochelle. Rochelle says, I'm not sure if someone's brought this up in any of the past season podcasts. I'm going to be really sad if they did because I'm really proud of this breakthrough. But my boyfriend and I were having a discussion about Cinco de Mayo and how people commonly mistake this for Mexican Independence Day. So we looked up the actual date and found out that it is commonly referred to as the Cry of Dolores. And like my brain exploded. This has nothing to do with what will happen next season, but I'm curious if they had this in mind when they gave Dolores her name and backstory, since the Cry of Dolores was believed to be about freeing people from bad governments and social orders. I also found it interesting that in this season, they then have her go to Mexico, where she decides that this is where she wants the host to live and be free. Another connection, not as strong, but in the literal sense, in the last scene, when Dolores gives out her final cry, it really gets to Maeve and brings her onto the side of revolution, thus setting us up for next season. And that comes from Rochelle.
Yeah, I thought this was really cool, Rochelle. I'm a sucker for a good name analysis, and I think there's some really interesting stuff here. It's also really timely with us just having had Cinco de Mayo pass just a couple days ago. And I looked this up too, and I found the same thing. And I think the Westworld showrunners, one of the things that I think is so interesting about them and that I love about the two of them is that they pull from inspiration and influences that most of us would never think to connect. And so I don't know if specifically this is where they were inspired by, but I buy it. I think it's really amazing. And please keep having your revelations so that you can help us love the show a little bit more.
As a compliment to the show is that we're even questioning whether they thought about this in season 1, right? Because they've done so many other detailed research and Easter eggs with names and meanings and biblical references, the fact that we would think that this abstract reference was something they had thought early on when they were just trying to get this robot theme park television show made is a testament to what they've done. This one, I'm not too sure, but they do put more time into research and laying out the backstories of their characters. So anything's possible.
Thanks, Rochelle, for your email. Next up, we have one from James O, who says, "Good day, all from Australia. I wish to offer a counterpoint to all those who see Serac as a villain. To start with, a lot of my perspective comes from how I view the plot of season 3, a very complicated twist on the classic trolley dilemma." And so he goes on and talks about the trolley dilemma, of course, you know, where there is one person on the tracks, there's a group of people on the tracks. The trolley is headed toward the group of people. You can pull the lever, but you kill the one guy. Do you do it? Is it ethical? And James says, now put yourself in the shoes of Serac. The railway tracks are the potential futures for humanity, boiled down to the most simple dichotomy. The trolley and the lever are Rehoboam, and the choice is allow free will, but almost everybody dies, or remove free will, and most people live, but not your brother, and by the way, you get to be a puppet for the rest of your life. Serac chose to give up everything in the hopes of saving his species, including his own agency, voice, and beloved brother, all in the hopes that he could save as many human lives as he could. I can't see Serac as a villain, given the sheer scope of the dilemma he saw himself faced with, the apparently inescapable death of his species, or the loss of his species' free will replaced with significantly less casualties. I'll quietly mourn the loss of the fictional man who cared enough about his species to sacrifice everything, yet still lived long enough to see his sacrifice be for nothing. Thanks to you all for producing the most interesting and engaging podcast for Westworld out there, and it was lovely to have Ashley on board for season 3. Hopefully she'll be on board for all future seasons and shows. Cheers, James O.
So James, make sure you listen to Shat the Movies this week. We have Crocodile Dundee, the review coming out. I think you'll enjoy it. But the issue with the trolley dilemma, you don't know that the world is going to end. You're taking this projection as gospel when it's been proven to be wrong. It's not 100% correct. It's so bad that you have to artificially manipulate the situation and get things to happen. So by doing that, you can't trust it's going to really happen. And all of Rehoboth's projections are in a world where Rehoboth still exists. It can't project the future without itself. So I think there are other options that it didn't take into consideration.
I also think that a lot of the time, some of the best villains that we have in storytelling are those that start out with really pure intentions. They don't intend to become what the path that their sacrifice and that their choices lead them down. I don't think that Sirach or his brother Ajami, that either of them started out trying to be a villain. I think they genuinely were trying to respond to this horror that had happened to them, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And that's what makes him really interesting. I personally do find him to be a villain type figure, but he's a very complex villain, and I love that. And like all the good villains on Westworld, Man in Black being the best example of that, they're complex, and that's what makes them so damn interesting to watch.
Now, listener Adam also wrote in about the way Sirach met his fate. And he says, "Hi, Shat team. I think you guys missed the main theme of the season. After episode 1, you were all interpreting the intro scenes in a different way than I did. I didn't mention it then, but as the season went on, I was more affirmed, and the finale really sold me. In the intro scene, there is a body reaching toward its reflection. The positioning of the reach reminded me instantly of the Sistine Chapel image of reaching toward God. That image was a key point in the leap toward consciousness in season 1. The theme of reaching for God and finding him to be nothing but a reflection has been literally everywhere in this season. The host started out thinking humans were gods and they were made in their image. The season 1 finale and season 2 are all about the host breaking free from that and killing their god. In season 3, the AI god is literally named after the biblical kings that built a home for God. Solomon built the temple, and Rehoboam saw the temple destroyed. With all this in mind, the pitiful end of Sirach is perfect. He seems to be the puppet master in the beginning, but in the end, he was only a puppet all along. The delivery was clunky for sure, but this season mirrors season 1, where humanity realizes their god was controlling them in a sick way and could be killed. I just wish the showrunners would have replaced some of those action scenes with a little more heart and mind. I'm sorry this email was long, and I doubt it'll make the podcast, but I love you guys and love the podcast. I married a Texas girl, and I love the addition of Ashley. She reps Texas in a great way. Thanks for keeping me sane, Adam."
Well, thanks, Adam. That's actually very nice to hear. I appreciate it. And one of the things that I liked about what you were bringing up here is there's a lot of discussion that's been had about how in this famous image of God reaching out with his hand, that behind him, that it's the depiction of a human brain, that's what God is sitting on. And so it's this juxtaposition of religion and science that Michelangelo was kind of giving us. And I think that nothing is more Westworld than that, right? This idea of deity and actual deity, or even going so far for science to be the thing that we worship and technology being the thing that we worship. And so I like this. I don't know if I buy that this is what they wanted the theme to be. And if it was, I wish they'd been a bit more consistent in sticking to this or any theme really this season. But I really enjoy your bringing up this image and the Sistine Chapel, and I definitely got me thinking. So thanks for that.
During the deep dive, Ashley brought up how buildings just suddenly started exploding during the riots. And we were puzzling over that. And listener Colin wrote in with an explanation. He says, "Hi, isn't it safe to assume those explosions that happen at the end of the season are from Lawrence? Remember when he met up with Stubbs and Bernard and we see the explosives in his truck? I don't think random people set off explosives on cue. It's likely Lawrence going building to building, setting up these bombs. Thanks, Colin."
Okay, as somebody who's worked in demo, you need more than a couple barrels to bring down a building like that, right? And yes, Lawrence was out there facilitating, trying to egg on the revolution, but I still don't get why that benefits Dolores in her attempt to free the humans, to give them free will. How does it help? Other than you're going to go in there and blow up Rehoboam, then I think it's great. But to go out there and just randomly blow up buildings.
So maybe midway through the 21st century, fireworks have been outlawed because Rehoboam's like, those are really dangerous. And so the only thing they have instead of fireworks is blow up high rises because it's in the sky and it looks pretty.
Yeah, that seems totally reasonable, Gene. That seems like a thing that will absolutely happen.
Thanks, Colin, for your email. Now it's time, everyone, for the complaints. But before we get to those, there is one positive email we got that really stood out from Jerry J. And Jerry says, "Hello, Shat Crew. I know many folks are saying this, but it's worth repeating. It was awesome having your podcast during the stay-at-home orders. It's made a huge difference in my mental health. Thank you. For season 3, if I look at it as the story of Caleb, it's right on the money. I think Caleb's story was rock solid with no holes. From the very first episode to the final reveal of him meeting Dolores in Warworld, it was very moving to me and actually made sense why Dolores picked him. Aaron Paul was perfectly cast. If Dolores' mission was to position Caleb to lead the resistance, stop Rehoboam, and get Maeve on board, her story also makes sense. Maybe I'm just too big of a fan, but I like how Charlores became the villain, Maeve became the hero, Bernard put his demons to rest, the Man in Black is now just evil, Westworld the park is over, but Westworld the world is on for season 4. Thanks again, and I look forward to many podcasts. Sincerely, Jerry J." Jerry, I appreciate this viewpoint because it does give us kind of a checklist of all the things that they did accomplish, right? So if you look at season 3 as setting up characters for season 4, getting rid of some old characters, bringing in some new characters, resetting that chessboard, I think it was effective. I think execution is where people are having the issue, which is not to say that all points of the show were poorly executed. In particular, I think in the deep dive we called out the scene with Bernard and Lauren was powerful and effective and really, to me, redeemed the way they've been treating that character. Same with Maeve. I think the scene with her and Dolores gave us a satisfying farewell to Dolores. Was I happy that Dolores died in some weird Age of Ultron scene? No, not really. But I think that scene between the two of them at the tree, that was a great way to say goodbye to Dolores. She wasn't maniacally laughing as she self-exploded and blew up Rehoboam, with some sort of like a thermal detonator or something like that. So I agree, Jerry. There were things to enjoy about the season, and I'm glad that you were able to enjoy those. Now it's time for our first criticism of the episode, and it comes from Black Girl Couch, who says, "While I agree this series can only truly be judged in its entirety and best reflected on once you've distanced yourself from fresh reactions and your own expectations, 2 seasons and the show continues its same pitfalls. The most ass-itching is the sheer amount of legwork I got to do to make this shit coherent when it's literally no show, just tell. Dolores wanted to play Kumbaya with humanity all this time. When the fuck did that happen? Pinpoint the emotional transitional moment because I missed it. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad she fell on the side of someone's idea of an angel, but juxtapose with very recently telling Maeve everyone is just copies of her in a villainous way while simultaneously not denying any of Maeve's accusations of being cool with human annihilation, it gets weird. What kind of knockoff Ford shit is this? She stole all the money to pay outliers from Rico as an army? Smart, but in the words of Rihanna, where have you been? Please, season 4, convince me the script was more thought out than the half-baked execution left on the screen. Marinate on the characters that matter, like Maeve and Bernard. They are overdue. Hire action directors for action scenes. The Flash does better, and it's on the CW, and the budget is much smaller. Stop cutting corners and giving fans homework. There is beauty in the world of the show they created. Let us relish it. Already missing the series, Black Girl Couch."
First off, I want to say is this is Black Girl Couch writing this. This isn't us. We're just agreeing with her. But yes, I think you're totally right. They didn't do the whole timeline mystery and what's going on and telling the non-sequential story of the past 2 seasons, but they still kept that mystery. Whose Pearl is in who? Who is that character? What's Dolores' plan? Instead of telling us a straightforward story. Episode 1 was dynamite. It was so good because there really wasn't a mystery. It was just telling us what was going on. I would have traded the guessing game for which Pearl is in which host for Dolores encountering people throughout the day. That's making her think, let's give humanity a chance. I would trade that for the 5 seconds we got in Park 5, where she's a potential rape victim in that Nebraska domestic terrorist scene. Give us some more reason to understand why she had that turn.
Well, we got some hate on YouTube for our use of the word plot hole in our deep dive, where they were saying that plot holes are things that, aren't filled in, basically, that, what we were talking about were not plot holes at all. Well, there's a definition of plot hole sitting right in front of me, where there's an inconsistency in the narrative or character development of a book, film, or television show. And what Black Girl Couch just explained is an inconsistency in the narrative. We were set up all season to believe, and all of season 2 to believe, that Dolores hated humans. She was what the Charloris Dolores copy is at the end of episode 8. And then all of a sudden it's this new Dolores. And while I'm fine with that, I'm fine with Dolores having a change of heart, we didn't see the path to get her there. And I think that's a missed opportunity, because Evan Rachel Wood, she's amazing. And I would have loved to have seen that journey that she went on. But I don't think we have to be too sad, because hopefully in season 4 they will do this. And she announced that she will be back for season 4. So maybe we'll get a chance to see maybe some more behind the scenes of how she came to this realization.
Thanks, Black Girl Couch, for being brave and the first shot fired at Westworld. Next up, we have Randy with 5 easy steps to write a mediocre season. It says, 1, have characters with unclear or illogical motivations. Rehoboam desperately wants the data from Delos, even though it seems to be running the world just fine without it. Caleb and Dolores want humans to have a choice, while busily and messily killing dozens of humans along the way. Maeve wants to stop Dolores to see her daughter until they have a heart-to-heart, and she drops the impetus she has all season. Bernard, Stubbs, and William's motivations barely matter, as they essentially did nothing to alter the course of the season. Step 2, comic book level villainy. Constantly berating and threatening your hired gun and then telling them outright they are not going to get the thing they wanted. Might as well stick the sword in yourself. You have Caleb right where you want him. To quote Scotty from Austin Powers, just shoot him. Connecting Dolores to the one thing she's been trying to get at all season, you should have had Vincent Cassel grow a mustache so Serac could twirl it while laughing maniacally. Step 3, never establish the rules of how the world works. Maeve can control electronics unless it's a drone or an automated gun shooting at her. Rehoboam can predict and manipulate trillions of potential futures, but seems to have only one strategy for attacking Dolores, wave after wave of disposable henchmen. Hosts can be shot, and it hurts them sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. If you expect us to be invested in characters, we need to understand when they are in real danger. Step 4, drop plot lines like they're hot. Wow, Bernard is blamed for the Delos massacre and his face is posted everywhere. Bet that will cause him no end of trouble after episode 1. Oh no, Caleb's mom is in a nursing home? Wonder how she fared after all the healthcare workers walked off their jobs. Serac has a second mole in Delos. Bet that'll be a big reveal. Rehoboam runs a mirror world simulation. That's going to be cool to see. Step 5. Take 2 seasons to train your audience to look for every subtle clue as being a part of a bigger mystery, and then have none of them pay off in the 3rd season. Remember in season 1 how you felt when Bernard couldn't see the door? All those subtle hints suddenly made sense. You felt rewarded for your attention. Season 3 saw hints about a simulation within a simulation, Caleb's mother not recognizing him as her son, etc., and none of them paid off. Instead, all the inconsistencies were just bad writing, not pieces in a greater puzzle. And that comes from Randy.
Randy is sour, and sadly, I can't refute anything he said. I enjoyed the show. It was fun each week, but when you lay it out like that, this is an autopsy. This is an autopsy of the show, and you can love it and think we're negative, but these are all things that the showrunners should address. Remember what worked in season 1 and try to put that practice into play.
Well, and I think the step here that I most relate to is number 3 about establishing the rules of how the world works. I've had a lot of time since the finale to kind of reflect and think about what was it that I was disappointed in. And I think a lot of the problem is they haven't recovered from leaving Sweetwater and leaving the Westworld park. I think we were all really excited to see this new world, but this new world was given to us in really fast chunks. And so we didn't have a lot of time to digest what it means for the hosts to be with humans that aren't paying to be with them. And we knew the rules of seasons 1 and 2. And I think that's hard for any show to jump both in genre and location and make those huge switches because we have to relearn everything all over again. And Gene, I'll give you credit for this because way back on the first Instacast that we did, you talked about how this new world was like a full reset. It was a full reset for Westworld, and we were going to have to watch the show differently. And somebody could probably come in and start watching it that had never seen seasons 1 and 2 because it felt so different. And that disconnect, they never have connected it back to what happened in Sweetwater. And I think that's part of our problem here and why I think we're all just kind of homesick for what the park gave us.
Thanks, Randy, for your email. Next up, we have one from our longtime friend, Chago. And he says, while there are many things I enjoyed finally getting confirmation, like Caleb is human, William is human, it's not a simulation after all, this season finale left a lot of threads dangling. Story arcs such as Caleb's mom, Sirach's brother, and Solomon were thrown out the window. Maeve and Bernard were absurdly underused, except for the final episode. Good acting moments from both actors there. Clementine and Lawrence appearing out of nowhere for no apparent reason other than to move the plot forward. Many things to dislike. If there's one thing to make it to the Telegraph, though, it's this. How fucked up was the writer to have Maeve tell Dolores regarding Caleb, are you going to turn him like you turned William? To blame William's erratic and fucked up behavior on Dolores is absurd. First, we all know from season 1 that she was not to blame. And second, we know from his own extremely private therapy session that the dark side of William had been there all along. To have someone blaming a woman for a man's error is just wrong. And that comes from Chago.
I could not agree more. I cringed at that line when Maeve said it the first time. I thought it was kind of gross to begin with. And I think it's more than just blaming him for the wrongs of William. It's blaming her for what William did to her in a way, because William took out his aggression and his evil on Dolores. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, but we've gotten some pushback. We're like, how do you know William raped her? And I think we all can assume that we don't know exactly what happened, but it doesn't look like it was good because she kept screaming after the door was closed when he got her in that barn. So whatever he was doing to her, whether he raped her or he beat her or he was just verbally berating her, I don't know, but it wasn't good and it wasn't nice. And he kept killing her parents and he kept killing her lover, if nothing else. And so he was a bad guy. And so I agree. It's just kind of strange writing, which I think is just indicative of whoever wrote Maeve this season. Just, I don't think really understood her character and who she's been.
I'm actually in the camp of people who don't think William was raping Dolores. I think it's inconsistent with his character. I do think that he was probably dismembering her, opening her head up, playing with her wiring. Also not nice things to do. With regard to what Chago was saying about Maeve, though, if it came from another character like Sirach, I would say, okay, I get that. But the thing is, Maeve is a host. Like, she knows what it was to be a host and to be abused by humans, particularly men. And so it does seem like a very strange line to be coming from her. And I get it. You're writing a drama. You want that line to really burn, right? And you want to make people think, oh, you know, this is Dolores driving another man crazy. What a siren she is, you know? But it was grossly out of place, Chago. I agree with you. Next up, we have Sean from San Antonio, Texas, who writes in, there are many plot holes and suspension of disbelief errors, but the bigger issue is that somehow I actually cared less about our favorite characters by the end of the season. The original Dolores died for real. Memories gone, deleted. I felt no emotional impact watching it. Why would I? She wasn't the Dolores I had spent the past 2 seasons with. In season 3, she was an emotionless, invulnerable, unsympathetic, and boring character. Even when she went full serial killer in season 2, she still had moments of vulnerability when she saw her father and when she lost Teddy. William died. That entire self-discovery arc he went through this season was for nothing. He kills the old versions of himself in AR therapy, concludes that he's the good guy, and decides he's going to save the world just to have his throat slit by an evil Terminator version of himself at the end. What was the point of spending all that time showing us William's transformation if we don't get to see him apply what he learned? Caleb is a boring character. Aaron Paul's acting made him less boring. Other characters repeatedly talk about how he is capable of being a horrible and violent person because he murdered his best friend. No, he didn't. Francis admitted he was offered enough money to kill Caleb, and Caleb shot Francis as Francis was pulling his gun on Caleb. That's self-defense. The writers want us to see him as special because he chose not to rape what he thought were non-sentient robots. Seems like a pretty low bar. Replace Caleb with any other non-rapist, and nothing changes because the character has no personality. Bernard is the most interesting host character in the entire series, and he did almost literally nothing this entire season. All these fantastic characters, and I don't give a shit about any of them. That comes from Sean in San Antonio, Texas.
And I think this goes to one of those earlier complaints. We don't know the weight. There is no knowledge about what kills a host. When's somebody really gone? Can you resurrect them? Are there backup copies? So the death of major characters, I expect them to come back. I wouldn't be surprised because I wouldn't be surprised if Peter Abernathy comes back. That somehow there was a backup cradle, there was a backup, whatever. So I think that is the issue. We will never feel worried or scared or stressed out about our favorite characters because at any point they could just snap their fingers, wave their wand to give us an explanation on how they're back.
And I think some viewers have mortality fatigue. Like, I think some people that's just become the trick in TV now, right? Game of Thrones, like you kill characters. Ooh. Westworld, you kill characters. Ooh. Like nobody cares anymore, It's just become so common now, right? You just load the show with characters, right? And that way you can kill off like 5 to 10 of them and you still got plenty of characters left. With regards to William, people might argue, well, sometimes characters just die and it's not a triumphant moment. It's not some poetic scene. I'll point to one of my favorite movies, Carlito's Way, and I don't want to spoil it for people, but there's a scene where you think everything is going to work out and then bomb, it doesn't. You were hoping, and then you were robbed of that hope, right? In this case, that wasn't it. William storms into this building in Dubai. He's shooting people. He runs into a host version of himself who immediately kills him. And that's it. And it's after the credits. Valid complaint. Next up, we have one from Andrew Arbogast who says, hey, y'all, with the craziness that is Westworld, I try my best to hold off my emotions on each episode until I at least watch it twice so I can focus on the tinfoil first. But something bothered me from this episode right away that I could not ignore, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. At the end, after Dolores Prime gets deleted, Bernard magically seems to understand Dolores Prime's plan. Did that not bother you guys? Like the entire season, he and Stubbs are trying to figure out her plan. Then he's given a briefcase that he probably hasn't opened until he got back into the motel and saw Arnold's wife. How from those two things is he able to figure out Dolores's plan? That seems oddly suspicious. Then his explanation for the entire situation is like, Dolores and I are connected together. Now I sense her missing or something like that. We already know that hosts can't communicate long distances, only short distances with the mesh network. So that felt super cheesy and really bothered me. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Andrew Arbogast.
Yeah, I think that would have been great to see. In my mind, I was creating a scene like they were in the car driving to his ex-wife's house. They open the case. There's a note in there. Dolores has given them like a layout and schematics of what the plan is. I created that in my head. But when we get the Jedi connection, I feel a disturbance in the Force. That was a bit much. But again, maybe in episode 9, we could have had that if we had done 10 episodes.
And maybe we could have had like an Iron Eagle sort of scene where there's a playlist. He's jamming out to it in the car. It's like, if you're hearing this, yes. I'm Dolores and I'm dead. But I need you to... No. Here's the thing, though, is, Andrew, I will push back on this one because they established early in the season that Dolores did something to Bernard's head. And we still don't know exactly what it is. Like, we know that the key to the Sublime is in there, but we don't know what else is going on there. For all we know, Bernard could be part Dolores. For all we know, there could have been some sort of a subroutine that gets triggered at a certain time. We're not exactly sure. So again, I'm not saying that that's the case, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't have shown us that, but they at least alluded to the fact that Arnold's head has been screwed with, and so we can attribute it to that, maybe.
Yeah, I think we could have traded off some other scenes for that. That was kind of an important moment. Again, it goes back to explaining why people do things, explaining why they have emotional turns or changes.
Thanks, Arnold, for your email. Next up, we have an email from Frank Drebin, who says, "Hey there. If you want to watch someone struggle to turn a computer off over the course of 8+ hours, you're welcome to visit my 74-year-old mother while she tries to fix her computer. She may not be able to spout all the philosophical references, but she can spin a good yarn and at least has a sense of humor. Maybe it's just 2020, but I find the seriousness and intellectual circle jerk to be tiresome this time around. I still love you guys and great job covering the show as always. Thanks, Frank Drebin. P.S. I play Warzone. If you guys get that going, I'd be interested in teaming up." I think he's looking at you, Big D.
I'm going to. I tried to order it, but it's the Xbox Ones now. They're in hot demand.
Well, I think that what you're saying here, Frank, I think there's some legitimacy to what you're saying in the sense that it did kind of feel like this season, it took itself very, very seriously in a way that didn't pay off. There were some people who were complaining that I was listening to that were talking about how too often we put too much weight on a show like Westworld because it's on HBO, and they're like, well, why does it matter? It's just TV. But I think we've been taught, not just with Westworld, but with HBO in general, HBO, your standards are just significantly higher. I mean, the golden age of television was ushered in with Buffy on the WB and The Sopranos on HBO, and that began the golden age of television. And since The Sopranos, I mean, look at all the wealth of TV that it's given us, including Westworld. And this time around, it just didn't hit in the same way that those other seasons and those other series have. And I don't know if it was an intellectual circle jerk necessarily, but it definitely didn't pay off. I don't think it knew what it was doing, what it wanted to be. Maybe it wasn't enough of an intellectual circle jerk. Maybe it was too much of something else. I don't know, but it just felt like it had an identity crisis.
I think the show, and I don't want to compare this to Walking Dead, because that is junk food TV. That is garbage, except for even you could say the first season was decent. But Westworld is suffering from a similar problem. In Walking Dead, every season it was like, I can't come back from this, Rick. We've gone too far. We've changed. Oh, wait, we can come back. We can be better. After fucking 4 seasons of that, you just want to scratch your eyeballs out. I understand we want to have these great big discussions of what is free will and, what is sentience and what does it mean to be human? But at some point, introduce something else. Start to not make that the only thing you fall back on to add a bit of mystery and what drives the plot along.
But to continue with your Walking Dead comparison, I mean, think about what happened to Walking Dead after the Negan cliffhanger when they opened up the next season and those main characters were killed. A lot of people that I know, including myself, stopped watching the show because it totally changed. It threw the rules on its head and it became too much of something. And I think that that's going to be interesting to see what happens with Westworld when season 4 comes out. Is I think season 3 is going to be a divisive season that is so divisive that it's going to be people that keep watching, but I think a lot of people are going to be so turned off by this season that they're not going to come back for season 4. And I'm curious to see what happens to the ratings and what happens to a potential season 5. They may have to finish the story next season, guys, if that continues to be the case.
If Twitter is any indicator and Facebook is any indicator of what people want out of a TV show, I think there's really 2 camps. There's a camp that wants a strong narrative. They want intelligent illusions. They want fantastic production quality. And that's what makes a great show to them. And there's another audience that wants to see cool shit happen on screen. And if you're trying to make cool shit happen on screen, the unfortunate part about that is you start to write the show to get you from cool shit to cool shit, right? And I got a little bit of that feeling in Westworld season 3 because there were really cool scenes, right? That were visually amazing and things that you're like, if somebody would tell me, hey, it's going to be a fucking fight between Dolores and Maeve with a bunch of cops with automatic weapons, I'd be like, fuck yeah, I'm watching that. If you're like, hey, there's gonna be a fight between Dolores and Maeve, and there's gonna be a gunship and a drone guided sniper rifle, I'd be like, hell yeah, I'll watch that. But it's how we got there. And then also, as several people have written in, the consequences of those events, right? Which were essentially nothing. And what Frank writes in about is kind of what people said about Lord of the Rings, right? Is like, okay, why don't you just have one of those eagle guys grab the ring and drop it in Mountain Doom, and then you're fucking done, right? Like, that's it. You're fucking, it's over. But that's not it. You need the story, right? It's about, that's why we watch the shows, for the story. And so how dissatisfied would we have been if Dolores just waltzed into Inside Headquarters, shut the computer off, and it was over? Like, we don't want that, but we certainly could have improved upon season 3. Thanks, Frank, for your email. Next up, we have one from Ryan in Los Angeles, who says, I'm a Westworld super fan, and after 3 seasons, I've come to the realization that Westworld does some stuff really well and some stuff very poorly. I thoroughly enjoyed this season, but also was thoroughly disappointed. Overall, I find the plot and ideas of the show fascinating and compelling, and the music, cinematography, and visual effects are worth tuning in for alone. I don't even mind the melodrama or that Maeve and Bernarnold had lesser roles this season, but it would be much less frustrating if they developed some other parts, like making me actually care about the real world. All we ever see of humans are these thinly sketched rich assholes and faceless goons. Ash and Giggles are semi-relatable characters, but they were essentially strangers to Caleb and added little insight. Show me why these people are worth setting free and why Caleb is the right person. Choosing not to rape a robot isn't enough. Next, cut the violence down considerably. I'm all for carnage and bloodshed, but I've had enough of all the missing bullets and silly neck breaking. It's clumsy and uninteresting instead of smart and thoughtful. It's a cynical way to move the plot forward. It's like they're saying we need to move from point A to point B, and we really don't care how we get there because we think you find it unimportant. But hey, you guys love violence, so eat the bullshit we feed you. If Nolan and Joy want to cater to a mainstream audience, at least give them Ocean's 11 and not The Expendables. But hey, I guess that's what happens when you rush through 8 episodes. Keep up the good work, y'all. Ryan in Los Angeles.
But I think they tried to meet the expectations of both audiences, and that's why we had the problem. They're like, well, some people are going to really want the John Wick shootouts, car chases, but then also other people are going to want to have that deep philosophical conversations. And they tried to split the road. And I think when you do that, you're never really going to make either side happy.
I feel like they had violence and really cool shit in seasons 1 and 2, though. I don't think that was something that was unique to season 3. It wasn't just all of a sudden it was like, oh, look at this badass moment. I mean, there were those moments in season 1 and season 2. Some of the coolest tech I've seen on television in the past few years have been on Westworld in the first 2 seasons. And I think that the point that's made here, I think, is a really, really interesting one about mainstream audiences. I think that a show that doesn't understand their audience and isn't loyal to that audience is a show that stops, and a show that doesn't get to finish its own story because people stop watching. And Westworld is not, or at least season 1 of Westworld was definitively not a mainstream audience show. It just wasn't. And I'm not saying that made it a good show or a bad show, but that's just what it was. It wasn't a mainstream show. Season 2, not a mainstream audience show. And it just seems interesting. And I wonder what happened behind closed doors, maybe in meetings at HBO. I don't know, but it feels like something happened where someone went to them and said, we need you to make this more digestible to a mainstream audience. And it just didn't work. It doesn't work to turn a show like Westworld into that, because that isn't what it was. And those shows are fine, but this isn't that show. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Ash. And I don't think they were even being secretive about it. I mean, it seems like in all the interviews prior to season 3, they commented on the changes they were making to the show. I think all of us were prepared to accept those changes, right? If you want to go more straightforward, that's cool. If you want to make it more action-oriented, that's cool. But I think what people are saying is at a certain point, a show loses its identity, and that's greatly different. Thanks, Ryan, for your email. And finally, we have a complaint about us. And it wouldn't be a Telegraph without one. This comes from Douglas C. Stromer, who says, okay, Your podcast is frequently enjoyable. In fact, I recently donated to show my appreciation. Thanks, Douglas. I like listening to interesting people talk about one of my favorite shows. So when you droned on about how disappointed you were in the final episode, I had to fire you. When I got to the definition of a plot hole, I had to stop. Good grief, gang. If I wanted a group of critics, I can find plenty online. My enjoyment rating for your podcast is at a season low. I like to feel good when I'm done listening. I switched over to Bald Moves. They talk about what happened. See you for season 4, Douglas C. Stromer.
So, Douglas, thank you very much for helping support the podcast and listening to us. I am a Bald Move subscriber myself. I pay for the premium content. I've listened to them since they were Blue Origin or whatever the hell they were called, Blue Yonder, way back. And if you listen to their Empire podcast, they have made a conscious effort to basically say everything is honky-dory. They realized that their audience didn't like it when they told them things that maybe they didn't want to hear. So I think they would be a good podcast to listen to, because Aaron now, when he's saying, oh, I really enjoyed the plot, if you can't hear the strain in his voice for saying these things which he doesn't believe, you're missing the point. We are not being negative. I don't think we were like, this is terrible. I'm so angry. I hate this show. We're just saying, man, that sucked, but this was cool. And if you want something all rainbows and unicorns, you can go listen to Bald Move or Chris Hartwick. I don't think we're ever going to give you that all negative side. But I mean, what can you do? We can't please everybody.
Our show format for big shows like Westworld is always 3 a week, and they have distinct purposes. So episode 1 per week is the Instacast, and that's our immediate reactions. And we're pretty much allowed to express how we feel about the show in that one. The third one of the week is this, the Telegraph, which is listener mail, and we will react candidly to voicemail and email. And so you might get an opinion there too. Now, with the deep dive, we've always said that the deep dive is about explaining what we saw on the show, talking about the plot, talking about the characters, not getting too opinionated about it. What made this one different is you can't talk about the plot of the season without talking about the plot holes, because these are all things that we'd mentioned previously. So this is all stuff that came up in previous podcasts that we were asking about. And in order to put a bow on the season, we got to get back to those touchstones. And so we said, okay, look, this thing, it was never resolved. This other thing didn't really make sense. So that was the rundown. And again, we want you to listen to lots of podcasts. So I'm not offended by the fact that you listen to Bald Move. I think that's great. I listen to other Westworld podcasts. So thanks for listening. Thanks for the contribution, and no love lost.
Yeah, I hope I wasn't too negative there.
No. I mean, I think this is the thing that people don't understand that's so frustrating about doing a podcast, is that at the end of the day, we are people who either enjoy or don't enjoy something. And it is very difficult to temper that when you're trying to find the things to talk about in a way that's really balanced and measured. And when we talk about a season finale, like you said, Gene, it's about connections. And so how does X connect to Y? Well, if all of a sudden we're talking about A and B that were not introduced until the very last episode, it's not complaining as much as it is just us trying to make sense of it as well, because that's kind of our job on the deep dive, is to deep dive into what happened. And when the answers aren't there, we have nothing else to say other than they weren't provided.
Joanna Robinson tweeted earlier today. She said, I can't tell you how many hours and hours and hours and hours of my life I've poured into covering this show. And many of those hours were spent in conversation as I struggled to understand and increasingly struggled to love Westworld. And I think that sums up my feelings in the sense that anybody who thinks that we don't like the show, look, I wouldn't spend this much time out of my life to cover a show if I genuinely hated it. I really wouldn't. The exception would be is if we pick a new show and we realize halfway through the season that it sucks, I'm still going to stick with it because I'm not going to abandon you guys. But the fact of the matter is that we are human beings. We do have opinions. And this season had flaws.
Well, and I don't think it's possible for us to make you like an episode or to not like an episode. I think that it's great if you liked it. I think it's great if you didn't like it. I think that our job has been just to kind of create dialogue. And I, for one, have loved the disagreements because I think that they're really interesting. And that's what makes the Westworld audience so, so great to be a part of. It's because it's full of people who are very opinionated, including myself. And I think that all of us, like I've said, will be here for season 4. We're not going to stop watching it.
And I think it's great that everyone's passionate. Douglas, I appreciate your passion. You should appreciate ours. That's when people stop caring, that's when the show is in trouble.
And Douglas, if I were to pick out one thing I love the most about season 3, it was just watching everybody's theories shit the bed. It was delicious.
It wasn't me joining the podcast.
That was my favorite. I was going to say that. That was my favorite.
Cutting that. All right. Thanks, everybody, for your emails. Now we have 2 voicemails, and the first one comes from Carmelita.
Hey, Chat Crew. This is Carmelita in California with some thoughts about Westworld Season 3, having watched the finale and listened to your deep dive this week, which was awesome, by the way. I want to start out by saying thank you for all your coverage and all the hard work you put into putting out content for us this season, because it really made the season for me. On top of the questions you 3 posted on the podcast, I have a few more that I was thinking. Because the hosts and humanity are sharing Earth, their fates are inextricably linked. So I'm wondering, what kind of a world did Dolores hope to be built from the ashes of the old one? As an outlier that was unsatisfied in his life under Rehoboam, who's been given this new freedom, what kind of a life does Caleb want to live? What kind of a world does he want to live in? This feels important to me. I can't argue against the idea that sometimes you have to tear everything down so you can start again. I think that's true sometimes. But having a vision or a plan for what you want to build matters a lot. Are there other components to Dolores' plan that weren't revealed in season 3? Things that will help in the building of the new civilization? Pieces of the puzzle that we're still missing? Did she think about what would happen after the destruction? Has Caleb thought about that? Are there other players in the game that we don't know about? Does Lawrence have a plan? I don't know. That's what I'm wondering. I know none of us have the answer to that. We just got to wait it out till season 4. But when that time comes, I will definitely be listening to Chat on TV. Love you guys. Bye.
Carmelita, I love this voicemail because I've been thinking all season about how Dolores and Caleb have first world problems. We're talking about free will and like, oh, we just can't live the way we want to live. And they're putting people in freezers and blah, blah, blah. Cool. You know what? Take Dolores to like a refugee camp. Take Dolores to a place where people are starving, where there's warlords running things and people are being routinely raped and sex trafficked. Cool, Dolores. You got rid of all that at the expense of freezing some people? Count me in.
No, not to laugh, but that would have been great. Again, let Dolores encounter somebody being sex trafficked. And she'd be like, wow, I can kind of sympathize with you. You're a human.
But that doesn't exist because Rehoboam fixed it.
No, it does exist, please. You think he's fixed the favelas in Brazil? No way.
Absolutely.
I don't believe it. Not one bit.
The closest thing we saw to sex work in the show was a very classy auction, and it was for charity.
Oh, but they were still sex workers. They might not have wanted to do that, but they had to pay the rent. But what I think Dolores wants, maybe she wants to go back to the Old West. She said she feels comfortable there. Maybe it's to eliminate most new technologies. Let's go back to a simpler time. But that might be hard with hosts who need technology to keep them fixed and up and running. But I think she would like a world that has less connectivity maybe and less influence from technology, where she can just blend in, let the hosts have their new world to grow and develop, something with a little bit of beauty.
Thanks, Carmelita, for your voicemail. And finally, we have a repeat caller. It's Rico again in Atlanta.
Hey, Chat Crew. This is Rico from Atlanta, hopefully with less background noises before. This is for Westworld Season 3, Episode 8. I agree with all 3 of your opinions about this episode. It was just, it was the equivalent of going to a fine dining restaurant, expecting great food and coming out with a Big Mac and a shake. It's probably the best Big Mac and shake you're going to taste, but it was not what was expected from a great show like Westworld. We have a lot of things that was just never answered about this whole mirror world issue, the simulation inside a simulation thing. It just left so much stuff open. Overall, I give the episode a 6 out of 10, and I'll give the season a 7 out of 10. It was still entertaining, but it was just, it felt that it really could have benefited from 10 episodes. And that's it. Just wanted to get my voicemail in real quick, and I'll be listening to you guys Friday. Talk to you later.
So before almost every episode of Westworld, Ash and I will be messaging each other because we get really excited about the trailer part or the recap with the music. I think that's very indicative of this show. If you set the show to music and show us the highlights from previous episodes, it's very exciting. Like I'm like, wow, I'm feeling a lot. Like I feel more excited, more emotional, more gripped by trailers and previously on segments than I do about the episodes themselves.
But I think that could very well be what they choose to focus the trailers. What content is in there? It is usually like emotional moments. It is the key characters. They can see in the trailer what works. You wonder, why don't they say, hey, this really works. Let's put it in the trailer. Let's do more of that.
But it does set up exactly what, our caller just said, though. It sets up this expectation of what you're going to be fed, because that's the appetizer, right? And then the entree comes and it's not great. I think that's the problem. And even in the trailers, I remember when we were getting ready for the season and everybody was watching the trailers and messaging back and forth like, holy shit, this looks amazing. And there were moments in that trailer that we never saw in this season, like Francis being in the orange jumpsuit in that one clip. We never saw those moments in the show. So it's almost like a whole different team cuts the trailers at HBO, and they're great at what they do and they hook you in. And season 1 and 2, I enjoyed my meal of Westworld, especially season 1. This season, it wasn't, if I'm giving it a Yelp review, it's not 5 stars. Maybe it's 3. It isn't the worst place I've ever eaten. I'm not getting food poisoning from it, but it is what it is. And I think that you're right. That's the letdown, is when all this buildup happens. That's why it feels disappointing, because we're not excited about what the plot's going to be, not, beholden to any theory that we have as much as it is just beholden to this idea that it's going to be enjoyable.
I'm guessing that Rico's probably a guy who enjoys the Big Mac as much as I do as well. So again, it's not saying it's terrible. Like, I love a Big Mac and a shake. It's just not what I came to this restaurant for, right? And so it's a great metaphor. I totally agree. And now I really, really want McDonald's.
Do you guys have those gourmet McDonald's in other places?
What's a gourmet McDonald's?
Oh, I can't believe it. Okay, so they have a couple of them in Orlando. So it's part of the regular McDonald's, but it's a gourmet menu. So they have like somebody with like a little chef hat, so you can get like a gourmet chicken sandwich, and it's not like the normal menu. It's like a burger you would get at, let's say, like a Ruby Tuesday, I imagine. It's not. I think the burgers are like $7-8, but the fries are the same. I got to get you a picture of it.
McDonald's has dabbled in that for a while. I remember when they had the Arch Deluxe and that bombed. They're like, it was their gourmet burger. In Arizona, we have the Taco Bell Cantina, where you can get booze at Taco Bell, and that's very popular.
We have the Pizza Hut Taco Bell here, so you can get your pizza and your tacos. So no liquor, though.
A combination Pizza Hut and Taco Bell.
So McDonald's has, and it is called their upgraded menu with signature crafted burgers. These new burgers include flavors like sweet barbecue and pico guacamole and spiced up classic staples for the Big Mac. The best part of these meals is that they're made from all natural ingredients and additive-free meats. And you go in, like there's like a dude with the chef hat, but it's in McDonald's. And you'll see people go in there and, dude, it's still McDonald's.
There's some guy out there right now listening who's got like a dartboard with your face on it. It's like, my fucking email didn't make it. Big D's over here reading the McDonald's menu. Sorry, guy.
They also have the Maple Dijon, the Maple Bacon Dijon with artisan grilled chicken. Who could say no to that?
Artisan grilled chicken.
And that's how we're going to end this season of Westworld, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Shat on TV Westworld Telegraph. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitch at shatontv.com/Twitch, where again, you can catch us Friday night for the Shappy Hour. That's 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. We also have the Florida Man show on Twitch, which is run by Roger Roper. That's at 6 p.m. Pacific on Tuesdays, where you can catch the latest stories and anecdotes out of Florida. And Ash, Big D, and I, along with Roger, will be doing lots of video games and other types of shows. So go ahead and make sure to follow us or subscribe at shatontv.com/Twitch. And even if you don't watch Twitch, if you're not a Twitch person, you can help us out by going to shatontv.com/Twitch and subscribing. You can do that for free with your Amazon Prime account. We're also on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at ShatOnTV. On Facebook, just search for Chat on TV Podcast. The website is shatontv.com. You can still email us or call for the final telegraph, which will be next week. You can email host at shatontv.com or call 914-719-SHAT, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pandora, Spotify, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a review. That helps the podcast grow. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat the Movies, where we do 80s and 90s movies. That will be going on forever and ever and ever, no matter what TV show we're doing. So go ahead and subscribe to that. You can catch up with us every week. Also, the Westies, go vote. shatontv.com/Westies. Put in your votes for Westworld. We will be recording that episode next Monday. It'll be out next Tuesday, so be sure to check that out. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, Ashley Schlafly, Roger Roper, and the King Bee, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us on Tuesday for the Westie Awards honoring Season 3 achievements in Westworld.
And as usual, stay the fuck at home. No, you do that.
As always, thanks for listening and stay the fuck at home.